Come on to the After Dark Podcast. The podcast in which Sheriff Anthony does his best to wrangle Konrad through Westworld, one doggone episode at a time. So kick back and grab yourself some Apple Jack, or some Adam's Ale if that's your preferred poison, and get ready for these two wannabe cowboys to ramble the night away. Music was provided by the fantastic Nancy Wyatt and Jared Iscariot. Enjoy the show! Hello and welcome to the After Dark Podcast. I'm Anthony James and that's Konrad.
Hello!
Well, Konrad, we're here! Finally, at the end of the first season.
We've made
the last good episode of Westworld according to everyone on the planet.
Yep.
What do you think?
What a shame. What a shame that we're never going to enjoy Westworld ever again after this. It's a good way to go out. If it is the way that it's going out, it went out with a bang. Multiple bangs, in fact, in the back of multiple people's heads. So, like, it certainly left our screens emphatically. I'll say that much for it.
Yeah, and guys, this is a huge episode. Like, this is an hour and a half long, so we're probably just going to get straight into it here. There'll be banter along the way. Don't worry about that. But we're also going to, just for anyone who's a Konrad Theory Matrix fan, the Theory Matrix will be covered next week after in the roundup. We're going to do the Theory Matrix because I think with this being such a long episode, we're just going to try and sort of separate those out. That makes sense, Konrad?
Yes, that all sounds perfectly reasonable to me.
All right, okay, let's get into it then.
Let's do it.
Oh, let's break it down!
The finale of Season 1 of Westworld begins with Arnold creating Dolores, and you can see all the insides of her, how she works and all.
Yeah, she looks like a carbon fiber bike. She's made of like netted fibers. It's a very cool design.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool as well. Just like sort of nice to get it, but it's also. It's interesting, like, when I first saw this, I was a bit of an idiot, because I was like, oh, so she's only got skin on that part of her? But obviously, no, like, you know, they have to be ready for them to potentially, like, have sex with people and stuff, so they just haven't put the rest of her skin on yet.
Yeah, they're getting, so the vulva and vagina in the shop, the special lab being designed for the people who want to treat it like a sex bot.
Yeah.
I will say, for this, that this is a show with very, very good practical and special effects. I assume that quite a lot of these are practical, but the animation here, like, obviously this bit isn't a practical effect, I don't think, but the animation here looked amazing. It was
when she turned around in the seat.
Yeah,
yes.
It was real top shelf animation work here, which I was very, very into and surprised. I mean, I know it's HBO, so obviously they have a high budget and they're used to making like prestige television. But even by HBO standards, this was unbelievable.
Yeah, I agree with you. Actually, like it's sometimes you see animation that's so smooth and just works so well. Like when she turned around on that thing and sat down, it just looks so smooth that it's almost like tickles my my heart. I don't know why. I'm just like, oh my god, that's so great. But yeah, it's just felt. I'm glad you mentioned that actually. So as with all bad guys who capture the damsel, she's shaving him. So the man in black's getting a nice close shave from Dolores. Now, okay, so Konrad and I spoke before we started this. There's so much in this episode to go through it chronologically perfectly. We'll go through chronologically, but we're going to have big conversations maybe at the end. And if there's anything we notice along the way, that'd be great. First of all, though, I thought we can maybe talk about this prior to reveal Man in Black part of the episode. So,
sure.
There's moments here where there's a number of power dynamics in this episode going on. There's a power dynamic with these two. There's definitely a power dynamic with Charlotte Hale and Ford as well later on, which we can talk about. But there's a strange thing here because at this point, are you watching the show like knowing this is William in your mind? Like you had the theory obviously, but did you know so much so that you even when you see Man in Black you think William?
Yeah, I think by this point that was pretty much nailed on. I think the photo in the previous episode was all the confirmation I needed to be like, yeah, okay, that's definitely William, and that they're gonna. I actually have in my notes later on in this episode, get to the William reveal, right? We all know it's coming. Come on, but in my own mind, watching this, It's interesting that she, like, I think Dolores says that she's like kind of always been obsessed with this place, i.e. the center of the maze and this kind of town that is there. And it's interesting that it might have been William. I guess actually by the end of this we know it's not really William because it existed before William, but William certainly helped to like fertilize and grow the seed of fascination in Dolores's mind with this place, with the plot line we see with them together when they were young or when he was younger. So it's cool to have this return to their relationship at kind of the other end of it, and see how they have changed or not changed really in Dolores's case. I don't think she doesn't strike me as that different across all of her timelines, which I think is one of the smarter choices they made, because it means that throughout the series it's quite difficult to tell which version of Dolores you're actually seeing, which is helpful for keeping things a mystery. Whereas William / the Man in Black definitely has changed like between when we first saw him and where we see it now. The one other thing I will say for this as well is that it's a bit of a cast-off comment, and it might be nothing, but William says that Ford has dug it up again, the town, implying that he's dug it up more than once. So, like, how many times has he buried and dug this up?
Okay, I don't actually think it's more than one, but okay. I like that.
As soon as he said that, I was like, wait, so did he? The stuff that happens in this episode happens, he buries it, and then like 6 months later it's like, fuck, I left my keys in there, and he has to dig it out dig it up again.
See, I actually think it's even funnier than that. Like, the idea is like William, like his mind, and I can say William. Yes, everyone in the comments, I did actually slip one or two times. I cannot believe that Konrad didn't pick it up.
I'm going to interject here. I can hear you in the comments saying, "Oh, Konrad didn't guess it. He secretly took that knowledge, pretended he didn't hear it, and used it to inform his theory." How dare you? how dare you imply that? Right?
It's funny, you know, because that particular slip, I think it was in episode 8 potentially.
Yeah, 7 or 8, I think.
When I slipped that time. And now, obviously, that slip makes sense to you.
Yeah,
people don't realize that Konrad has his theories before we start recording the podcast. Like,
I'm not like coming up with them on the fly.
They're all written down. Don't worry. Like, I think some people were calling for an inquisition. Maybe in the future.
Listen, my hands are clean. My hands are clean on this one. I swear to God. Like, Anthony told me to go back and listen to that episode after I finished episode 10 of Westworld to see what the slip up was, and then I read some of the comments. And I'm not going to name names, but some of you need to have a little bit more faith in me.
Yeah, I personally, to be quite honest with you, I can't believe that I slipped up twice actually earlier in the season as well. There's something, I don't know what it is. Like, I think it's just so how well done the transition of William into Man in Black is, that both characters are William to me. It's kind of like I'm not gonna lie to you, it was really hard in season 1 of Dark, not to say a particular, I'm not gonna say who it is, but a particular character was Jonas. I found that very, very, very difficult because both of those actors are Jonas to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've left that sort of semi-unspoilery, but most people listening to this have seen Dark. Let's be honest. But
yeah.
But yeah. I don't know. I slipped up. Sorry, guys. I'll learn from that, which I don't actually. No, I won't learn from that. Let's be honest. Dark's the only one I could do it with. I don't know why. But anyway, okay. So. Great reveal. We'll talk a little bit more about the reveal later. What I want to talk about is Teddy. Finally, just like giving in. He arrives into town just like normal, bumps shoulders with a fella, and just shoots him dead.
So I've got a question here. This might be completely wrong, but is this moment with Teddy shooting this guy, is this the early morning shooting that we have seen over the corner of Maeve's shoulder every time she's woken up?
No. But that's a great idea, though.
Because it suddenly struck me. I was like, fuck, was that Teddy just shooting this guy every time we saw this? And I just didn't notice. But, I mean, because it's a similar kind of distance between them. I think they're similarly dressed. I mean, let's be honest. They're all dressed as cowboys. It's hard to tell them apart. But that was my thought when I first watched this. But even if it's not, yeah, great to see Teddy just be like, nah, fuck off. And just,
I think it would sort of... It would be cool if that was the case, but I think it sort of takes away from this moment for Teddy. Like he's exiting his loop as soon as he's off the train, kills someone, and then he just runs to the train and is like, you know what, fuck this, I'm out of here.
Yes.
I actually will say I was actually on a train of thought, no pun intended. I was on a train of thought with William earlier. I don't know why I stopped it was about the reveal. I just got distracted. But I was going to say about the town being buried again, right? In my mind, it's funnier than Ford just digging it up a lot of times. It's because it implies that William actually thinks that like all towns are like come from the earth.
Yeah.
You know, because like
they grow.
It was originally it was originally buried before it was even existed. It was buried, and then they dug it up. And then it was there.
Yeah.
And now it's buried again, and they dig it up again. So
yeah.
that's how, like, because he was implying that it didn't used to be dug. It didn't used to be covered in dirt. So they used the word again, which implies it originally was.
William is a man of science. He's not a man of history. So maybe he doesn't understand that ruins don't look like Western American towns. Like maybe he thinks this is like a Native American ruin or like an Inca ruin or something like that.
So stupid. Okay, so we get like sort of a little flashback now. Because we've got the Man in Black, which is William, I can say that safely now, and Dolores sort of walking out and having a chat throughout the chapel. We now have the sort of symmetry going on between her chats with Arnold, and then we sort of get them walking out to a gravestone. Konrad, whose gravestone was it?
It was Dolores' own gravestone, I believe. Well, it certainly said the name Dolores on it, I think.
Yeah, Dolores Abernathy was on it, and she digs up the little maze. Now, question for you. Now, we don't have to get into all the details here. Well, that's what this podcast is for, actually. But question for you. Do you kind of understand what the maze is now?
Well, so sort of.
It is a bit nebulous, I will say.
Like, okay, I mean, so I'll say, I just want to say first, lovely little reference, I felt, to The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly with the gravestone with something hidden in it, which I was very much into. I was, when she first found the actual maze item itself, I was kind of in my head making very smarmy jokes like, oh, it looks like just like one of those toys that a kid plays with to get the marble through. I think, in fact, that's a joke I've made before on the podcast, and wouldn't you know it, blow me down. not half an hour later, they ruin the joke by confirming that is, in fact, what it is. But I mean, in terms of, like, what it represents, I mean, the pattern of its... it's weird, because obviously he's got... Arnold has his triangle of consciousness, and he kind of loops it all together when he's explaining to Dolores how consciousness kind of works and how you have
look
to
inward, not outward.
You have to like navigate these layers inward to find true consciousness. And the pattern that he draws is not identical to, but pretty similar to the pattern in the toy that his now dead son had. Now, I don't know if that's just like a production design decision, like to be like, oh, it'd be cool if the pattern in this kind of mimics the pattern that his theory kind of latches onto.
Well, they said the toy gave him the idea, so that's
okay,
yeah.
That's it. I mean, that seems kind of throwaway to me, to be honest, because it's just a toy. But I think it works as a kind of like visual representation of what his idea about kind of navigating your way to consciousness is. But as you say, it's kind of nebulous, not in a bad way, but I feel like the artifact at the center of the maze could kind of be anything, really. It doesn't really matter, because it's about going through the process of finding it rather than actually what you do when you find it.
Yeah, to be honest with you, the fact that it is a maze with a ball in it means that, like, I think the first time I watched this, I was kind of like, okay, that's a bit nebulous. And then I was like, hang on, does it actually mean that only sentient and like people with consciousness can get the ball to the center?
That'd be great.
But like that's yeah, exactly. Can you imagine?
I can tell you that, right? I do not have sentience, if that's true, because I could never do these these maze puzzles.
Oh god, that's hilarious.
I was just used to turn them upside down. Get the ones with like the clear plastic on the top, turn it upside down, and like navigate it like that rather than doing the actual maze puzzle. Now we're thinking.
All right, okay. So we get some stuff like Dolores says to the Man in Black here now, like, you know, you'll never win or whatever. I've got someone coming for me. Now at that point, I'm assuming the Man in Black thought that Dolores was talking about Teddy. You know, because he didn't actually. It's not till later we get the reveal that this is William, obviously, and like, you know, he starts laughing at her about it. But I think that he probably just assumed, oh, she just thinks like, because she always talks about how Teddy's going to take her here and take her there, you know.
That's interesting, actually, because I took that as her referring to William, but I guess Teddy does make more sense.
No. She is referring to William, but I'm saying what William thinks.
Yeah,
obviously he's not thinking that she's talking about him from 30 years ago.
Well, I actually did think that, but I think Teddy makes a lot more sense in the context of that, because when she says that, and then William or the Man in Black kind of smiles wryly, I was like, that's good, but at the same time, I don't see how any, like, I feel like at this point, I don't see how anyone in the audience could like miss that Dolores in the Man in Black's world like isn't stabbed, even though they're wearing the same outfit. So it felt a bit on the nose for her to be saying that directly to him. But then actually, if I take a step back from that and like, okay, she was talking about William, but he's interpreting it as Teddy. That actually makes a lot more sense or it is a lot less on the nose in terms of where their relationship is actually going.
Which is really interesting because of what actually happens. Because Teddy does indeed come and fulfill his destiny.
I know we'll probably come back to this, but I just wanted to say the moment where he lashes out at her is a great moment because it really kind of shows the duplicity of his relationship with her, where it's never really been about her. It's always been about how she makes him feel. And as well, the way that she remembers William. Again, this might not be. Actually, no. So we've said that you think Dolores is talking about William when she says someone's coming for me.
Yeah, she is because then later on she says, William's going to save me.
Yeah.
It's just that there's no reason for the Man in Black to think she remembers him.
But I think the fact that she remembers William quite vividly from something that happened 30 odd years ago, to me shows there is a genuine connection between her and him. And also ask some interesting questions about how their memories kind of carry across their lives, because she's been wiped hundreds, thousands of times probably in the last 30 years, and yet she still remembers William, which I think says something about the depth of her feelings for him.
Yeah, I also think like she remembers the things she did when she was on this road.
Yeah,
like
I
once
think
she's
that's true.
she's out of her loop, she starts remembering the things that she was out of her loop doing. We get a return of the gun.
Yes.
From like the second episode or whatever.
Yep.
And it was given to her by Arnold. And we do see now that actually the Teddy in the sheriff uniform is the one who's actually doing this stuff. Not in the military uniform like was sort of put into his brain.
Yeah.
And they're shooting up the town. What did you like about this sort of gun reveal?
I mean, the gun. To be honest, the gun reveal was the least interesting part of this. To be honest, because I don't know, the gun reveal. I feel like that's not really been necessary. Like it could. They didn't like the sort of planting of the Chekhov's gun and then the return here. It's not like some big reveal because it could just be like they've found ways to hurt. Because they found ways to hurt people already in this show. The idea of her having a real gun that can actually hurt people.
My interpretation of it, which actually just as you're speaking is coming to my mind. You know how at the start of the show she had it in her drawer. She took it out of the ground, whatever it was. Yeah, I think she took it out of her drawer.
Yeah.
So like anyway, my idea is that like that was actually one of the original things that was like sparking her to go down the path again to lead her to where she is in this episode.
It could be. Yeah.
So Ford might have planted that. Ford might have planted that to get her out of her loop,
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's always there. Maybe it's always like the part of resetting Dolores's loop is putting the gun there for her to find to start the loop. But I think as a narrative device, I didn't really care about it by this point because I was like, well, obviously Dolores is going to kill some people. But the actual scene itself, it plays brilliantly into both like the kind of tropes of their backstory. So Teddy like shooting a bunch of people and then being like, "How could I have done this?" and not being able to like square away his actions with how he sees himself at the moment is fantastic because it kind of plays brilliantly into that dark backstory that we know that he doesn't actually have. But in a kind of like ironic turn of events, he actually does have some really dark shit in his past. He just doesn't remember it because it's not part of his backstory, which is great.
Yeah. Also, like, what's your understanding of Wyatt in this whole thing now?
So I think Wyatt is just superimposed over the top of all of this. Like, it's basically, it's taking the memories that Teddy and Dolores have, which, by the way, we're not getting to the Theory Matrix this week, but I did say in that, I don't think either of them were involved in this shootout. Turns out they were both involved in this shootout, so I was completely wrong. But I think the whole Wyatt storyline is, at least as far as Teddy and Dolores are concerned, is this massacre happened because of the stuff that goes on with Arnold and kind of the instructions that they receive. And all the Wyatt storyline is doing is putting a kind of like theatrical veneer over the top of it to say, oh, there was this guy who was, you know, orchestrating everything, and he did the massacre, and it's literally just kind of touching up the scene to make Teddy and Dolores not the perpetrators, but simply witnesses of it, which I think is brilliant as well, because it totally jives with what we've seen previously about how they just kind of tweak actual memories they have to turn them into new narratives and storylines.
Yep, awesome. Was there anything else you wanted to mention about this sort of scene with the Man in Black and Dolores prior to reveal?
No, I think that's pretty much everything for the moment on this, I think.
Okay. Awesome. So we did get a little shot of William, young William now. We'll try and say Man in Black for the audio listeners whenever we're talking about old William still, just so you sort of can see the picture in your mind. But
yeah, old
William
Bill. We'll call him Old Bill.
Old Bill, yeah, Old Bill. Yeah, that's great. All right. My mind is straight. I don't know why. It's Old Bill Cockblock. That's what we call him.
There you go.
Right.
Someone put it in IMDb. That's the character's name now.
Yeah, you can take it. So okay, and Al Lazo's back too. So this
is so weird. Like getting Lawrence back, Al Lazo back for this. Like, what is this? Just him getting a payday? Like, come on back in. Like, get yourself on set, and we'll slip you in here.
Yeah, well, he was a big part of the season, so I don't mind it too much.
He was, yeah.
It also does. It makes sense as well for William to go and get him and try, like, you know, for a bit of information and stuff. I mean, the slow reveal of the camera moving across to then see Logan behind them.
This is like a classic example of like one character remaining stationary in terms of their morality, and one character starts off on one end of the spectrum and kind of moves to the other side and like shifts past the character, and using that kind of character, in this case Logan, as like a benchmark for determining when the other character has gone too far. Because Logan, by the end of this episode, is like, listen, I'm into some weird shit, but like, this is fucked up what you're doing.
Yeah, there's a moment whenever William like stabs a Confederate that he's already shot.
Yeah.
And Logan's like, Jesus.
Yeah, that's great. I made me burst out laughing that moment. It's like, if Logan thinks you've gone too far, that's a good sign that you need to chill out, William.
Oh my god, unbelievable. Right, okay. Lee Sizemore. Lee Sizemore is here.
Bless him.
Back. Good on him. He had to have some sort of thing. I'm going to say this right up front. I think the some of the dialogue between Lee Sizemore and Charlotte is some of the most unintentionally funny dialogue I have ever, on a rewatch, I have ever heard. Like, once you know what's going to happen at the end of this episode, those two are like the whole way through scheming away, saying, "Yeah, you're going to be in charge of this storyline. Don't you worry about that." Like, it's just so funny watching this. Like, they're so confident.
But I mean, even to be honest, the ending and like the kind of culmination of Ford's new narrative took me completely by surprise at the end of this. Didn't see that coming at all. But even without that context, it's so obvious that Lee is being completely manipulated here. It's like, come on, Lee. Like, you're obviously this. You are not going to be the star of this show. I don't know how much clearer anyone can make it.
I know, it is funny, but like every single time it goes to them, every single time, like Charlotte is so confident, like she's like real hubris about her in this, you know. So great. Okay, well, that will come back later. Now, Maeve has got a brand new body. It makes sense now, Konrad. I can't believe I'm an idiot. I've seen this show a couple of times. Of course she had to burn herself to death. Of course, because she needed to get rid of her whole body. So they can recreate it without the... Which vertebrae was it? I don't know.
C6 the explodey one.
Yeah, the explodey vertebrae. Get that out of there. She's back. She's back and better than ever. And better than ever. She's back and she's... like she's want to do... Grab Felix's tablet and make a few changes.
Yeah, this is the moment where she like turns off a bunch of security for other hosts in the park, and I immediately was put in my... Well, first off, I was immediately reminded that Michael Crichton wrote the original, I think it's a book or screenplay that this is based on, and I was immediately then reminded of the Muldoon character in Jurassic Park going, "There's nothing wrong with the raptor fences, is there?" Because I was like, this is her turning off the T-Rex fences. She's letting them out.
That is great.
She's the Dennis Nedry of Westworld.
Isn't that funny that Crichton just loves a park? It's so weird. Like,
yeah, he cannot do without a park. Like he needs a park with dangerous animals or otherwise kind of subdued beings in it.
Absolutely ridiculous. I will say actually, but we skipped over this little detail. Is it believable that Sylvester would remake her body when she's burnt to death? Like, what? He's wanted out of this from the start. Why is he remaking this body?
So I went two ways on this plotline. This is I've made no kind of bones about it. This is my least favorite plotline of the entire show so far because it's stupid. I get that where this narrative goes, which maybe we'll talk about a bit later, where there is someone kind of has pre-written Maeve's escape. It's essentially preordained that this is going to happen, which I assume is probably Ford, given everything else that has gone on. I get that you can kind of explain away a lot of this with them, with that knowledge. What you can't explain away is Felix and Sylvester's behaviour, who are completely ignorant of that and wouldn't behave the way they behaved. They literally, by the 2/3 point in this episode, they literally start a robot uprising because they're worried they'll get fired if they don't keep quiet. Yeah. And it's just like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Like, it's just like, she's a skeleton. She's not gonna hurt you. she's literally just bones.
What's he worried about? Like, every tablet he ever buys from now on will have Maeve as a virus on it. Like, why does he care? She doesn't have a body.
Yeah, it's I walked back some of my criticisms of this plotline by the end of this episode because of that reveal that it's kind of pre-written and there's some there's some of the security lapses. I was like, okay, fair enough, I can explain that. But Felix and Sylvester, they are badly written characters, and they need to go. All I'm going to say for Westworld is they need to have a serious review of their hiring practices for the Chop Shop, because we get some characters in this Chop Shop later in this episode, and my word, they just going from out of the frying pan and into the fire as far as characters in this.
I mean, that's what we've always said. Felix and Sylvester might be really bad, but that guy who loves Hector is not really, like, he's probably the worst of the worst. But yeah. Okay, so I think that's pretty funny, actually. Felix, I think, is infatuated with Maeve. I think I can see that.
Yeah, that's true. Felix, I can kind of excuse.
I think Felix has sort of got the same relationship with Maeve that William has with Dolores. Having said that, there's been way less development put into it.
I think that's fair.
But Sylvester, who's been trying to stab them in the back from the start, having a Maeve with no body, and then building her body, like. All we needed maybe is Maeve to warn him the episode before, saying, and don't worry, I will still be about. If you do this, I'll be able to do this. So there had to be something. Like, what was the stakes here? There was no stakes. Anyway, there we go.
Yeah.
So she brings back Hector and Snake Lady back online.
Yep.
Fair enough.
They are being worked on by the sort of typical employee of the Chop Shop, which seems to be exclusively perverts.
Yep.
In the business, we call these guys jobbers. That's what these guys are. These guys existed to job to Hector and the Snake Lady.
Yeah. Hector and the Snake Lady were going over here every day of the week.
Oh, yeah. They put them over big time in this episode.
So we've got, first of all, Earphones guy obviously likes a bit of Hector, but I will say he's actually quite smart, this boy. And let me tell you why. I don't mean to critique a sexual abuser. Well, it's a robot, but you know what I mean. Sexual abuser's way to go about this. But he was warned by who warned him? I can't even remember her name.
Elsie,
She's
right?
been Elsie, because she's been dead so long I can't remember. Well,
has she?
Dead. So. But he was warned that, like, the sexual encounters are monitored. So instead of actually using it as a sex doll this time, he's just, like, feeling his chest while servicing himself. Did you notice that?
Yeah, but I also feel like that still counts as a sexual encounter, right? Maybe not.
But would Hector register it though? I think he's trying to not. Like, he might be so stupid that this is going to be registered too. Yeah. But I think he's trying to avoid it being registered. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like he just can't. He just can't quit Hector, unfortunately. So he's trying to work around the monitoring systems, which, I've worked in call centers before. I've had to learn to work around some annoying systems in myself, so I understand it.
Yeah, not to do the same sort of activities, but yeah.
No, that's true.
So, bite of the finger. Snake Lady bites the finger off
Yep.
of this. Yeah, it's funny actually. Is it a prerequisite for being cast as as one of these hosts that you have to have really good teeth?
They do all have great teeth. Yeah, that is true.
Look, it seems that Americans in general have unbelievable teeth. Unbelievable teeth. Whereas, like, over in this part of the world, if your teeth are healthy and not falling out, you don't do anything to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas everyone's got like these perfect teeth. It's unbelievable.
I mean, all the better to bite off someone's finger with. That's the real. Like, she's got the sharpest incisors you've ever seen.
Yeah, I know. Like she's biting the finger off with the wrong teeth. That's all we'll say.
Yeah.
But
the blood ones at the back. It doesn't make sense. Like, his finger is like in the back of her mouth. It's like, what, you're chopping it off with your molars? Like, what's going on here?
And then someone might say, yeah, but like, you know, she might have just like, you know, chopped it off with her incisors at the front. But that can't be true either, because it's only the tip that comes off. This is poor writing if we've ever seen it.
Yeah, this is it's classic. They didn't want to do like any kind of special effects, so they just got him to do like that with his finger, like, and shot it from the side.
The old magic trick that gets kids all the time. All right, okay. So one of my least favorite parts of this whole season, she feeds the finger to the guy. She bites his finger off and then feeds it to him and makes him swallow it.
Unnecessary. Yeah, I didn't get a sense of whether she killed him or not, to be honest. Like, the other guy definitely died. I think this guy, you definitely wouldn't bleed to death from having a finger cut off, or at least very, very slowly. So maybe he's alive still. I mean, they kill like literally everyone else. So there's no reason to assume they left this guy alive.
Yeah, is that all they did to him though? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe
I don't think it shows
stamped on him or something.
Yeah, maybe I just missed it, but it seemed like she spent a lot more time taking pleasure in this guy's discomfort than all the others who they just shot with P90s.
Well, if he does survive, he needs to not take my brother's advice, because my brother lost the tip of his finger in the gym. He was this is my younger brother. He was in the gym. His mate was on like one of the machines, and he leant on the machine to talk to him. And then, and then the weights came down and took his finger off.
Oh, that's
his pinky fingertip. And then he went to the hospital, and they were like, "No, this is the wrong hospital. You need to go to a different one. They've got the A&E correct. You know, the correct A&E for what you need." And he was like, I can't bother going tonight. So he went home, put the finger like in his wardrobe on his chest of drawers, just like left it there, went to sleep with like bandages all over his finger, took the finger to the hospital in the morning, and they were like, we can't do anything for you.
Yeah, that's not how you preserve pieces of body. I'll say that right now.
The funny thing is, his pinky fingers were so oversized that one hand now just looks normal, and the other one's still got his really long pinky finger.
That's disgusting and great. Well done.
Yeah.
That's a great way to correct your finger length.
Yeah, next time you see my brother, you'll have to get him to put his pinkies together for you to show you the difference in the size.
Fantastic.
Okay, all right, okay. So Hector wakes up. He doesn't like this fella who was just having a go with him.
Great kill here with a knife through the chest.
Yeah, that was a great one. And Sylvester now has a little moment, we'll say, with the Snake Lady. You know, I wouldn't say I'm jealous, but he doesn't seem to be appreciating it. Having said that, she is terrifying as well.
Yeah. This entire situation is very scary, and if Sylvester hadn't considered that maybe he shouldn't bring Maeve back to life before, I think he's certainly realizing his mistake now. Yeah,
I guess imagine it would be like she didn't have a body.
Yeah.
What did I just do?
Yeah, it's like when you like accidentally, I don't know, you put when you're doing like the self checkout at like Tesco, and you've got like 2 croissants in a bag, and you put in one by mistake, and it's just like, am I gonna get caught for this? Like what's gonna happen? It's like 30p worth of crime. Like it's you're not gonna get in trouble for it, but in the back of your head you're just like, they're gonna get me. They're gonna get me for this one.
There was one time I was in Tesco at the self checkout, and I had like this is back when I used to drink energy drinks. I used to drink them quite a lot. I haven't drank them in a few years now, but I had like a 4-pack of Monster, and I scanned through the thing, but accidentally scanned only one can.
Yeah.
Out of the 4. and I noticed it, and I was like, "Oh God, sorry," and I got the person, and I fixed it, right? And then I went out, and I was with my friend, and when I got out of the shop, he went, "Oh my God, you never guess. It scanned 1 can." He had them too. He bought the 4-pack as well. He's like, "It scanned 1 can. I got 4 for the price of 1. It's unbelievable." I was like, "Oh, for fuck's sake, maybe I should have just not said anything."
You were the William and he was the Logan in that situation.
Yeah. And then I've turned into what I am now because of it.
Yep.
It was in my brain the whole time. Okay, now we get the reveal, as you said, that it's all been sort of. So they get the tablet, and this specter the whole time in Maeve's code that someone has been working on it. Now we can just talk about it now. It's revealed basically that someone had designed what she's been doing this whole season. Basically, It seems that way.
Yeah, and it's got to be someone who can write code for these robots. So I mean, my mind immediately was like, well, it's either going to be Bernard or it's going to be Ford. It's got to be one of those two.
Well, they mentioned Arnold, but I honestly thought Ford as well, to be honest with you, because Ford is the one sort of orchestrating the whole thing at the end of this.
Yeah, I mean, based on the way this episode ends, where he's like kind of the Nero style figure who, basically orchestrates the destruction of the park. It's not a stretch to assume that he would also orchestrate a more subtle kind of breakout for some people on the DL. So that was my thinking.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Okay, so the reveal is coming.
Yes.
Dolores says that William's going to come for her, and then the man in black gives a lovely little smile.
Yeah,
lovely little smile. Now, we've said before about how TV shows love to sort of drip feed you information about a reveal all the way up to the point where just before the reveal, they're basically saying, "This is it!" Because we all know we love the feeling of feeling like we got something right.
Yes, absolutely.
So, at the start of this story, most people probably already had it together, right? I remember when I first watched this, I can't remember when I put it together, but I remember when he started smiling like this and she said, "William," I remember both Ema and I were like, "Oh my God, it is him, we were right," but I can't remember when we put it together, but this was the moment where we were like, here it is,
Yeah. And I think like there's a very like smart kind of shift in the narrative structure here, where when it goes into backstory, but with the man in black doing the voiceover of William's story, implying that he was a character in that story to be able to tell it. It's a pretty clear shift in like narrative structure, and it is very much kind of leading you by the hand to that revelation in a way that still lets you feel satisfied when you get it before they explicitly say it.
Yeah, I think at this point, if you still didn't have a clue who this guy was, I think starting this story, it's either going to be, at this point, it's narrowed down 100% down to either Logan or William at this point.
I think so.
By the end of the story, obviously, it's obviously William. But because I even noticed...
I don't know what happens with Logan at the end of this story. I'm going to be honest. Like, that's something we need to talk about.
Well, he was sent out on a horse naked at the edge of the park.
With a black feather, which I don't understand either.
I don't know, maybe that's a calling sign for the Arikura or something? I don't know.
I was just like, if we never going to see Logan again, is this seriously like how he goes? He's just like sent out into the wilderness naked on a horse in Native American, in sort of, a violent Native American tribes country, and that's the end of Logan.
Well, I think there's a little hints in what William's dialogue is because he's saying like, I'm going to make the company, do this or whatever, and Logan's like, my company, and then he's like, well, they're never going to trust a madman.
Yeah.
So maybe it's sort of implying that he's like sending him out with no clothes, no food, everything. He's like maybe trying to drive him mad.
Okay. I mean? Yeah, I thought I was like, when I first saw this, I was like, why is Logan naked now? And but yeah, I guess because I was thinking maybe it was just to humiliate him, but I guess maybe he's trying to give him heat stroke and get him like half killed in the wilderness or something, which I feel like they probably have protections against, surely.
Yeah.
They'd have some drones on the edge of the park being like, probably let's not let the host starve or die of what's it called when you of thirst, rather. I couldn't remember the word for dying of water starvation. At the edge of the park, but I mean, it's a very natural end to their stories. I just would have expected Williams to culminate in him actually killing Logan, rather than this sort of slightly more ambiguous ending for them.
Well, there is a second season, and also William killing Logan. How on earth would he get to the point where he's like this philanthropist, head of the company? You know,
that's true.
They have cameras all over this park.
Yeah, that is. I mean, well, if they have cameras all over this park, they're capturing him, sending him off naked into the wilderness as well.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
Listen, that's just good, clean fun, is what they're having there. But you pull a gun on him, and now that's a problem.
He does actually very soon own the park, so he probably could have killed him and then just deleted all the things. You know?
Yeah, that's true.
Like Bernard does, circle around Logan on the horse and just shade him away.
Get rid of all of that. I will point out another theory that is proven incorrect of mine. Oh, actually, I don't know. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this, which is that William kind of symbolically drops the photo of his wife here as if to suggest that that's the end of like any kind of any real connection in their relationship, which proved a theory of mine wrong, that he planted that photo at the Abernathy Ranch back in episode 1 or 2. Though it is a bit, if it wasn't planted, so this isn't a criticism, it's more just an observation. If it wasn't planted, that feels awfully convenient that it finds its way back to the Abernathy Ranch, which makes me think, as you said with the gun, maybe someone else is planting that back at the ranch to kind of kick things off.
I don't know, Konrad. I think looking back at the past and thinking that things being convenient is points to them not being true is a dangerous game to play. I think that when things have a low likelihood of happening, when you look back at them, they're always going to seem unlikely. And you know, like human life, for example. Let's look back at it. Let's look back at human life, Konrad. What's the chances of life actually coming about? Very, very small. But that doesn't mean that we aren't living in the world where that small likelihood actually happened.
What a beautiful sentiment that is.
If that photo didn't get there, then the story of this show wouldn't have existed. Just like if humans didn't actually very unlikely come to be, we wouldn't be pondering the question. So that's sort of where we are today. You know?
That's chaos theory.
That's a Westworld theory. Okay, so actually you kind of got a theory right, but it wasn't really a theory, because you were showing actually how much you actually are understanding and keeping up with the show. Because in the last episode, I think we were talking about if Dolores was killed or whatever, or and you said, well, if she's killed, she'll just end up back where she was on the farm. You know, she'll just end up back on a normal thing, and that's literally what happened. Like, why is William such an idiot? Like, she left. Of course, she's going to eventually end up back on her loop. You know, because I think we were talking about her because she got stabbed or shot or whatever it was.
She gets stabbed in the gut by Logan.
Yeah, stabbed by Logan.
And it's just like she's not going to survive that. So
she clearly just died in the forest or whatever, and then she just, as you're right, she just like ended up back here. Now that wasn't technically a theory, but maybe that could be a retrospective one.
We'll see how the scoring's going, because I'll a little sneak peek. It's not looking great for season 1 so far for me. I do love this bit though, where William turns up. I could see some less charitable souls being like, this is a bit on the nose, because William turns up looking like fucking Luke in Return of the Jedi, wearing like all black with a black hat now. And it's like, oh, I get it. I see the shift that this character has gone through. But I actually enjoyed it, and I really, really enjoyed having seen earlier in this episode Dolores 30 years later showing that she still has affection for William, she still believes he is coming to save her, and she still has faith in that relationship. To see William on the other side of this, see her go through what is a very kind of what is her scripted interactions with other guests in the park, and to kind of respond to it like a jealous lover, essentially, who kind of rejects her and kind of hates her for it, I think, is the impression that I get from that. And there's a lot to be said, I think, about William's obsession with Dolores dressed up as affection for her, and how their different approaches to their relationship with each other is kind of perfectly encapsulated in this episode.
Yeah, no, I would 100% agree.
Okay, there's a great match cut of hats, I have to say here. Like the match cut on the hat.
Yeah,
that's some editing right there. Whoever did that, well done.
Speaking about the hat, it's fine. Like, it's not a problem. Like, but I don't really like that he just took his hat off a random Confederado or whatever. Like,
Yeah, that feels. I feel like he should come. I guess you couldn't do him coming back to the park and picking the black hat again. But yeah, taking his hat from a Confederado feels a bit weird.
if he was going to, or like whoever he took it from, I think if he was going to like get the hat from somewhere, like I would want it to be more meaningful than that.
Yeah.
What's the difference between just taking it off the ground and just getting it from Tallulah, the actress Tallulah?
I mean, not again, not to play like backseat like scriptwriter, but I think you probably couldn't have done this because sharp-eyed people would have figured it out way too soon. But if you'd have had the man in black wearing Logan's hat, that would have been really interesting, and like had him kill Logan and then take his hat at the end of this. That could have been very cool, I think. But it would have like immediately given away that there,
because you would have seen it straight away. Yeah. Well, you would have thought the whole time we would have thought it was Logan.
That's true, but it would have given away like the different timelines thing straight away, which I feel.
Of course, yeah. That wouldn't be
they
good.
wanted to keep under their hat for a little while longer.
Heyo. Okay, so Dolores turns into the Terminator for a bit. She
God, it's a great scene.
Yeah, I love it. There's a few things in my mind whenever she first like changes, throws him in the church, snaps his arm.
Yeah.
First thing is Hosea, take me to church. Like I was like, as soon as she threw him in, take him to church. You know, like starts beating the crap. Also, she's just dragging him. Ed Harris's face, like.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, we're talking about Terminator. Yeah, when she started beating the shit out of him, I was just like, dun, 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 dun. It's happening. Like the robot Skynet has gained self-awareness. Now listen, I'm not a doctor. I'm happy to admit that. I have never seen a compound fracture to the arm no-sold the way the man in black no-sells his compound fracture to the arm. Like that is a nasty break that he gets here, and within maybe like 2 or 3 hours of this event, he's sipping cocktails and having a wonderful time. If that happened to me, I would just curl up in a ball for 2 weeks until a doctor came and saved me.
I wonder if this is a hint to the world. Maybe there's some sort of like injections to heal him.
It reminds me of in Starship Troopers, Drill Sergeant Zims breaks someone's arm in a similar way, and then later on in the day they've got this like kind of tube full of blue liquid on their arm, which is clearly just a cheap way of being like, I don't know, where it's like a future cast, and maybe that's what they've got in this. They've got like the Starship Troopers blue liquid that fixes compound fractures somehow.
Yeah, that would, of course. Okay, so Teddy comes to the rescue because basically in the struggle, Dolores gets stabbed by the man in black, and then Teddy fulfills his not so predetermined destiny. Yeah. He actually comes and saves the day and rescues her from the bad guy. Yeah. I thought this callback to sort of his original sort of storyline, like what he was portrayed to be, was great.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of really genuine touching moments in this episode, or touching storylines. The Arnold and Dolores stuff is fantastic. There's some great touching moments between them, which we'll probably go back through when we actually get to the end of that. And this kind of Teddy finally getting to be the hero in his story with Dolores, even if it ends tragically, is really, really beautiful, I think. And you know, there's a lot of catharsis in this episode. Dolores gets the catharsis when she beats the shit out of the man in black. Teddy gets to be the hero of the story. There's just some great, great moments in this episode, and this is right up there with them, I think.
Definitely. But who's back online?
Who's that?
Bernie. Barnold is back online.
Barnold's back.
Barnold. He did tell us he'll be back, and he is.
Can Maeve just tell who's a host by eyeballing them, or did I miss something here?
Well, do you remember she? Well, it seems that she can. She can probably read like the system, but she also was talking to. She's actually what made this Bernard, this version of Bernard, like since he was reset by Ford, go down the road. Remember in last episode?
Oh yeah, that's true. That is true. Yeah, sorry, I'd forgotten that she has interacted with him. But it's just funny, like her looking at Felix and be like, "Don't worry, you're not one." It's like, all right, we're just to trust you, are we? Also, again, not a doctor, but I don't think a bullet in the head can be fixed with the magical cauterizing tool. Which this little wand that they have is like a proper Doctor Who style thing. We're just like, I don't know, we just wave it at the area and it'll figure itself out.
This laser technology they've got is ridiculous. Like it also does tattoos.
Yeah, it does. Does whatever you need it to do. It can X-ray people. It can remove bullets somehow. It's all singing, all dancing.
Yeah, and then we get in the next scene. So obviously, Bernard's back, and we'll be back to that very, very soon. But we get the classic TV reveal thing where we finally know that the Man in Black is William. And then, of course, a character we've seen him converse with before comes up and calls him William immediately.
Says the name. It's just like, that's interesting that you haven't said that until we, the audience, know it. That definitely stood out to me as well. It's kind of silly, but I don't know. This is, I guess, as you've had the match cut on the hats, you've had the Man in Black voiceover, you've had the fight between Dolores and Man in Black. This is kind of like, get that last horse across the finish line. like we need to just make sure that everyone's on board with who this person is.
Yep, exactly. Right. Okay. We're here. We're at the end of the story. Anything that happens past this point for me is kind of like sort of like a post game, right? So basically, Teddy and Dolores get to the beach. They have a loving moment together, and then they freeze. A spotlight hits them, and there's an audience there.
I didn't call the audience, but I'm gonna say as soon as this scene started and the moon is incredibly massive and low in the sea, I said to my partner, "That's a Truman Show ass moon if I've ever seen one." That's like a wall that's actually got a spotlight in it or something like that. And so I'll talk about the scene within a scene here first. I think it's impressive that they managed to give emotional weight to the scene with Dolores and Teddy, given they have both died multiple times. It's hard to cut through all that context to actually get any kind of real sentimentality out of the scene, and I think it's testament to the actors, the actor and actress in this scene, that they managed to capture something in that, because it is genuinely touching, despite the fact that we know that they've not necessarily been through this exact thing multiple times, but they've been through stuff similar to this multiple times. And then I feel like Teddy kind of ruins this moment, because like Dolores is talking about this beautiful trap inside of us, this kind of seeking some greater meaning, and then she dies, and Teddy emits a really funny just like no, like she does, and it's great. And then there's the pullback and reveal of the audience who applaud like they're applauding actors, which is really weird in and of itself. I guess maybe they're applauding Ford more than they're applauding the hosts, but still.
Yeah, Ford comes out as like, my new narrative. Yeah. It's great. Okay, so there's obviously quite a bit happens with this party and the new narrative later on. But before we get there, I thought we would sort of, at this point, we'll sort of take a little divergent step away from the chronology of this a bit. Let's talk about the Maeve sort of ending to this season now.
Yeah, okay.
So we've got Hector with machine gun with one arm. He's just using one arm, no recoil. He's just like really strong.
I mean, I'm glad that they did, but when he picked it up, I was like, are you going to understand how to use an automatic weapon? But I guess they're probably they've coded them to know karate, so like they probably can code them to understand automatic weapons as well. Despite
it's like we talked about like that Matrix thing, they downloaded it into their brain. Okay, so they're sort of like making their escape, and then they come across an area.
Yes.
Which is
maybe very
pretty interesting.
Very.
What do you think about?
So I've got a theory that I think the next season is going to feature some Sengoku samurai stuff based on the area they find, and I'm very excited because I like samurai things a whole lot. It seems like this is obviously work to create either a new narrative or a new park or something like that. But it's just a great little kind of cameo for what or suggestion of what the next season is going to look like, which made me really excited.
Yeah, and Maeve says to Felix, what's this? He's like, it's complicated.
Meaning Felix doesn't know. Like he's not an educated man.
Like, I don't know about you, but like this Eastern Asian man, whenever like it revealed the samurai, it went to his face and he was like really awkward looking. I was like, this is a strange choice.
I mean, this little moment is very cool, but I feel like it's kind of just a little throwaway for next season that we'll probably return to.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Sort of hinting that there's more to be done. Right. Okay. So Maeve gives Hector a kiss.
Yep.
Says sayonara.
Does she actually say sayonara? I can't remember.
No, but that was very much intended.
That'd be great. There's also a
And
very
then-
just as a kind of another like East Asian reference. There's a moment where but when Snake Lady gets left behind in this bit, they each get their moment to be like, "You go on ahead," and and save the day. And Snake Lady drops someone, and actually no, it might be Hector who does it. Drops someone, and then like without looking, shoots them when they're on the ground, which is a very John Woo movie kind of thing to do. And I was like, okay, you've done your research. You've done your research for this stuff, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was really cool, and the blood on the glass in the background as well.
Yeah.
Okay, we get a couple of sort of, as you say, you go ahead. So the you go ahead moment is she gives Hector a kiss, and then. She also has that moment with Felix as well, where she calls Felix a terrible human being in the nicest way possible. And then she goes on and gets on the train.
Yes.
So we're sort of crossing. Sorry. You go ahead.
Well, it's okay. I've got two thoughts here. One I think is wrong, but it was what I was thinking while this was going on. So we know that this is like pre-scripted or has been coded to happen by someone.
Yeah.
And the fact that there are so many fucking red shirts just running towards these guys and getting shot in this scene, I was like, there's no way that someone coded this to involve killing this many humans. So my first thought was like, are these all hosts as well that they're killing? Because it felt like the human cost was too high for this bit to be predetermined. That could be completely wrong, but that was my first thought. My second was actually it starts back in the scene where they wake up Barnold for the first time, where or for the second time, I guess, where Maeve asks to be stripped of her memories of her daughter, and it's a nice parallel between her and Bernard, where they both want to kind of let go of painful memories of children in order to kind of forge new identities. And then it's weird because Maeve then, when she gets on the train later, and actually in the elevator with Felix, there's this implication that she does want to go and find her daughter. And it didn't necessarily... It felt inconsistent to me. I think maybe they were going for she herself is conflicted over whether she actually wants to go and get this her daughter back or not. But to me, it felt like going from I want to remove any memory of this person to I want to go and find them were too extreme. I feel like they needed to kind of bring those ideas closer together to really capture the conflict inside Maeve. But I mean, I'm interested to see what happens with that. Whether this is all still her operating along a path and where that path is going to lead her.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I took it that whoever gave her this predetermined path wanted her to leave the park. I think part of this, maybe even part of Ford's new narrative, is to have one of the hosts leave the park as well. And therefore, I think this little creeping thing in her to want to save her daughter is actually the part in her that is gaining consciousness. So at the end, whenever Ford's having his speech, and he says, like, they can choose what they want to do or whatever, and she gets off the train and walks out, I think that is her going against what is predetermined. I think that's the first moment that happens. In terms of the human cost, I've got quite an interesting idea about that. So basically, Arnold, we find out in this episode, and this sort of covers a couple of things, so we can cover a few things with this, but Arnold finds out this episode that Dolores is alive, according to him, and she has consciousness now. And he decides that it is integral then not to open the park. She's alive, and his option is almost she's alive, so therefore she shouldn't exist. Kind of, not really, but he's sort of saying, like, we'll keep a lid on this. We'll not open the park. We'll keep this contained. We'll not not even make any more, because he didn't like the fact that he has sort of made her live forever and have eternal suffering. That's why to him it was worth being killed to make this stop. Because in his mind, he has now doomed all of these robots to sentience and consciousness and suffering forever. Yeah. So that made sense to me. But Ford, interestingly, at the end of this season, has come to Arnold's way of thinking in terms of thinking that they do actually have consciousness. But his solution is not to put a lid on it, to stop making them. His solution is, well, let's let them try and take over them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, they have So it's interesting that there is later on in this episode than where we kind of are. Ford, in one of his great Fordisms, he quoted Mary Shelley Frankenstein before, maybe understanding the irony of that. But I mean, it's not a great thing to quote when you are yourself the mad doctor to some extent. And then in this episode, he quotes Oppenheimer, the guy who worked on one of the guys who worked on the Manhattan Project, and it's interesting that Ford quotes Oppenheimer when it is probably Arnold who more encapsulated how Oppenheimer felt. I have become death, destroyer of worlds. Like this realization that what you have created is so awful that you almost can't live with yourself for having done it. And I feel like that's kind of how Oppenheimer felt. And Ford quoting him, I think, suggests that he understands by the end of this season how Arnold felt, which is why he's kind of happy to go out the way he goes out. But as you say, I think his approach is that, well, it's done now. You can't put you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. The atom bomb was created. We lived in a nuclear age. Like, that happened. Can't go back to it. And this is a similar situation where it's like, listen, we've created sentient life. It would be more monstrous to kill every host and get rid of this life that we've created than it would be to now allow them to live as they wish to live. And it's a really interesting ethical question. I really don't know which side of that I fall down on. And I will say for Ford in this episode, for someone who at times has been quite like Machiavellian and arch, like he's almost like kind of a mustache twirling villain at times in this season. They really do a great job of kind of putting a bow on his storyline and changing the way you perceive him, as they have done like multiple times throughout this this season. To be fair, they've changed how I perceived him a lot of times. But yeah, I love how they kind of wrap up both Arnold and Ford's storylines in this episode. It's so good.
Yeah. It is great, and we'll talk a bit more about like Ford's speech and stuff. But in terms of the Arnold, I think you are right there as well. Like the idea that Arnold wants to destroy it all, and he did actually make Dolores kill all the hosts as well. Because I think he felt, kill all the hosts, have her kill me, and then she can kill herself. And then when they see I'm dead, they'll never bring them all back online again. Yeah. I think that's what he felt, and it is interesting to see Ford. Like, he actually ended up, in a way, being more of an ally to the host than Arnold was.
Yeah, I think so. Well, and again, I think they're different sides of the same coin. I think they do actually want to help the hosts, but in Arnold's case, he thinks helping them is not subjecting them to a lifetime of suffering, or in their case, an eternity, effectively, of suffering. In a way, I think actually when I kind of reflect on that stance, we've often criticised Ford as a character for kind of playing God and like lording it over the host, and I definitely think he has done that through this season. But I think in a way that like taking on the power of life and death and saying, no, your life is going to involve too much suffering, I'm not going to let you live because I don't want to inflict that on you, is more playing God than saying, I've created life, off you go, do what you want to do. And it is a fantastically explored idea both in this season and this episode.
Yeah, it's really cool. Okay, so ramping up into the end now, we have a nice little last moment between Ford and Arnold. Barnold, I should say.
Barnold, yeah.
I just slipped, even though I'm allowed to now. So, where... It's funny because Bernard like has these moments sometimes where he thinks he's figured it out, So he's like, he comes and he says, he's basically saying to Ford, like, I think you're mistaken, like I think you're wrong here.
Yeah.
And Ford's just like, no, my friend, it actually was me in control, not Arnold. It was me.
Yeah.
And then in a nice little touching moment, a sort of a little hint as well, maybe where Barnold's character's going, is he gives him the toy as well. So he's trying to encourage him to sort of seek consciousness himself.
That was the moment where I freaked out, and I've got in all caps in my notes, holy shit, the maze actually was one of those toys. You've ruined the joke. Yeah. Ruined the joke. Thanks, Ford.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. Okay, before the very last scene now, we have the moment where Dolores realizes, now you kind of put this together before you even knew what you were putting together, the voice within her head was her own.
Yeah.
And that is, to me, the key center of the maze. The key center to finding consciousness is realizing that you're telling yourself to do what you should be doing. You know?
Yeah. I think it's having, and it's interesting. Like, it's really cool how they layer the storylines on top of each other here. So you have Dolores realizing the voice in her head is her own, but I think throughout the just as an aside for that, I think throughout the show they have had multiple voices speaking to her. So they've had Arnold, Bernard, they had Ford at times kind of speaking in there as well. But I love the way it kind of cuts through all that to be like, oh no, it is an inner voice that she actually has developed here, and she is simply hearing the voices of people that she thinks will be telling her what to do, but it's actually her own. And I love how they layer, even though it's kind of an aside and doesn't really mean anything at this point, but she is kind of like, Dolores is kind of Wyatt at this point as well. Like, as much as that Wyatt storyline doesn't really matter, but Wyatt has been like kind of presented throughout this season as like the master of a broader narrative, and it turns out that Wyatt as a character is completely fictitious, but at the same time, this idea of Wyatt is kind of encapsulated in Dolores' self-actualization. Like, she is the master of her own story in the same way that I don't know if I can say the same for Teddy by the end of this season, but he has gone on a similar journey, and I'd hope he has had that same kind of sense of self-realization as Maeve has had. But it's just this really clever kind of like layering of the kind of lower level kind of basic storylines on top of like the broader thematic discussions, and it works so well.
Yeah, no, and I do agree, and I personally myself, I was waiting for you to say that. I didn't want to say anything, but I personally myself very much took it that like Dolores is the Wyatt that they were waiting to awake. You know what I mean? Like she now, for all intents and purposes, is like the leader of this group, and I think like all these like sort of hosts uprising, and I think at the very end, like there are some points we could talk about in the finale if you want to, but at the very end, there's a big difference between the two killings that she does.
Yeah,
when she kills Arnold, she kills herself. When she kills Ford, she starts killing everyone else, and it's like no, she has awoken, she's back, and she's not going anywhere this time. You know?
Yeah. I think that there are similarities. Obviously, they both Ford and Arnold allow themselves to be killed. As an aside, I was, when I was watching the Arnold speech, I was reminded of Bilbo Baggins' speech,
the Ford speech.
Yes, sorry, the Ford speech.
Yeah, you thought he was going to put the ring on?
Yeah, I was like, I'm going now. I won't see you for some time. And he puts the ring on and disappears. Like, I was very much reminded of that speech. And in a way, he does disappear, but into the afterlife because Dolores shoots him in the back of the head. But as you say, it's when Dolores shoots Arnold, she does it. There's a tenderness and a reluctance to do it. She's closer to him. It's not kind of done as maliciously, whereas
she also was told to do it. This time he didn't.
Whereas with Dolores, it's much more like execution style, pointed at the back of his head. I think she's still kind of been instructed to do it, or not instructed to, but
manipulated.
Yeah, Ford has kind of set the table for this to happen and knows that he is going to die as a result of it. But there's a lot more malice towards him in the action, and as you say, she then begins icing everyone else. And there's one character out of all the characters in this, and it's a character I've given a hard time before, that I have to draw attention to, and it is that scumbag bandit who, when Dolores starts shooting people, it cuts to him and he has this wry smile on his face where he's just like, about time. It's such a great little shot, because it's just like he's just a worthless character who's had no development, and I love the fact that he's the guy that they show at this point.
It's actually funny because there's a little bit of a setup to why also he would love the humans getting killed, because he was just like used as like a William
as a target.
Tell.
Teddy, like that bit was one of the. I don't know why it struck me as much as it did, but that bit with like Teddy kind of, you know, showing off his gunslinger skills to the board members, and then like, you know, shooting him in the arm and stuff. It was just like really horrific. It really struck me as just like these are just playthings to these people, and you know, coming at this scene as we do, knowing that they have awoken, it makes it really hard to watch. And there's a great. The show hasn't really done it to this point, to my knowledge, but right at the beginning, when Teddy kind of like rejects his loop and gets on the train and sets off on his journey to arrive where he is now, he sees like a wolf running across the town where the massacre happened in flashback. And then there's a brilliant moment where the tension is building throughout Ford's speech in this scene, and you've got cuts to like the woods, the darkness around Sweetwater or wherever it is they are, and you've got the man in black kind of looking out. His arm's absolutely fine at this point. He's drinking and smoking and having a great time. And then you hear a wolf howling, and it's just like this great little moment, this great little like audio cue of like, oh shit, something's gonna go down here, guys.
Yeah, exactly, and that's sort of like the end of the show as well. Like you end with the man in black seeing these people coming, and it's his face. He's got a smile. He's like, "Yes, this is what I want," you know.
And then he gets shot in the arm, and he seems less happy about.
Yeah, he's like, it's real.
Yeah.
And then the very last thing we see is Dolores shooting everyone, as I said, and she sort of, this is now serious business. This is season 2. So. There's the end of season 1, episode 10.
Yeah.
Konrad, you want to get into the roundup?
Let's do it.
Okay, so this episode got on IMDb 9.7.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's always hard with the end of a season because you get the culmination of all the questions that you've had, all the plot lines you've been following. So it's naturally going to be satisfying. Although, actually, having said that, sometimes, you know, if they fail to stick the landing, it makes the disappointment all the more palpable. But I think, all told, I think this is probably the best episode in terms of the pace it moves at, what we see unfold on the screen, how we see the catharsis for characters like Teddy and Dolores, and the kind of emotional relationships between Arnold and Dolores and Teddy and Dolores. There's a lot of great stuff in here, and even Felix and Sylvester's dumbass storyline couldn't ruin it for me.
Yeah. It was good. It was great. Right. Okay. So the last thing we'll do then is we'll get into a couple of questions.
Okay.
And then remember, guys, next week is we're going to go through the theory matrix. So first one. Brent from the Middleman says, "Is playing with the timeline a cheap trick or a legit technique for fooling the audience? The more I think about it, the more I think it's a cheap trick. But I still love season 1. Thanks, gents."
I don't know if I go so far as to call it a cheap trick. I think there's different ways to do it. I think when your show is as well written, and I always hate to go back to it, but it is the first show we ever did in this podcast, and it's kind of, you know, the high watermark for timeline stuff. When your show is as well written as Dark, it doesn't need to conceal its different timelines. You know, it can be like, this is in the 20s, this is in the 50s, this is in the 80s.
Yeah.
It's quite comfortable to say this is a different timeline because it's confident in the writing around its characters and events to keep things interesting and keep them compelling and maintain its mysteries that way. With this, I think this is not a badly written show. There are moments in this show that are really, really well written, but there are moments and characters that aren't that well written, and I think they just don't have the chops to pull off confidently saying this is this timeline, this is this timeline, and this is this timeline, and letting the mystery kind of sit within the actual action of that timeline itself. So I kind of know what you're talking about in the sense that the kind of the mystery is just, this is a different timeline, and there's literally no way that we could possibly have known that without figuring out which characters are which, because there's no distinguishing features between them really until you start seeing characters that you know. But I think it still works in the purposes of this. It's just that the sort of timeline reveal isn't as big of a deal as it would have been in another show.
Yeah, exactly. And we did mention as well, like, there is some, you know, reports that this is a show that was saved in the edit, and I think the way I view that, maybe I'm wrong, but the way I view that is like the way the reveals and stuff are done. Like, I mean, obviously the double timeline was always planned, but the way it reminds you constantly what's happening and sort of drip feeds you the story coming to fruition, and like I imagine when they first wrote the script, it was like the editors read it and then looked at the footage, and it was like, I'm William or whatever, and it's just like, what, this has come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So I'd imagine there's like quite a lot of and even I think probably like the journey to consciousness is probably the thing that was worked on by the editors the most, because that is a real, I don't even know how you would script that, to be honest with you. The way it's so dynamic, so many different shots, the memory, the way it's portrayed, it seems like impossible to even start writing. And the only way I can view it is that it was like a real collaboration to get it to be successful like it was,
Yeah, I definitely, like, coming at this now as someone who's seen the first season, I definitely see what you mean about the editing. Not necessarily that it saved the show, because I don't know that much about that story, but the editing is definitely notable in the way that they cut around different timelines and cut together things that kind of thematically work with each other. It is very striking.
Yeah, okay, 2 more questions. First one from Vic Disco. Glad you enjoyed the first season, Konrad. Question for you. When Ford said to the Man in Black, this game wasn't meant for you, it was meant for them, do you believe him? Or was this game really meant for William?
No, I don't think it was. I think I do believe him. I think William is fundamentally self-centered. I think we've seen that in his approach to his relationship with Dolores, and to some extent his relationship with Logan. Logan is a piece of shit. I don't think there's any denying that. But William is still has a relationship with him, and I think there's probably some part of Logan that enjoys some part of William that enjoys the fact that he can sit next to Logan and be confident in himself that he is a better person than Logan. I think that's why that relationship exists, or at least part of the reason why it exists. And with Dolores, his relationship with her is informed entirely by how she makes him feel. So I think his ideas about the maze and this path to consciousness is that it's about him. It's about like his journey to try and free the host. And I think the reality is that he doesn't actually know anywhere near as much about it as he thought he did, and isn't all that important to it. If the Man in Black didn't exist, I'm sure Ford would have found a way to end this season the way he ended it anyway. Like, William really has no part to play in it, but he thinks he's a major character. That's kind of how I view him. Okay,
no problem. Okay, so last question. Bill Ross says, what do you guys think of the viability of Shogun World? I think it takes a certain level of crazy to want to go up against a samurai. Do the katanas turn to rubber if the guest misses a parry?
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how that works. They're like the old what they call, they're like those sticks that have like a string that pulls through. When you pull them, they go tight, and then you let the string go. Oh, they're like the wands, and they just go floppy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how that's gonna work, but I suppose viability is an interesting question, because I have thoughts about the viability of Westworld, to be honest. It's one of those things where it's just like, wait, so how do these guns work? They put holes in hosts, but they don't put holes in people. Like, what how does this function? But it's one of those things where you just have to not think about it too hard, I think.
Sorry, Conrad. I personally think it's been quite confusing, the viability of Westworld, this whole time. We've been told by multiple characters that they need to get their act together, that the park is failing or whatever. But then we've also got like William, the Man in Black, saying in this episode to Dolores that business is booming. It's all over the place, to be honest.
Yeah. I think that the idea that the park is failing is kind of just tossed out there as a kind of basis for the board animosity towards Ford. It's not very well explored, and it's not very well realised in what you actually see in the park, but it's kind of one of those things you can forgive because it develops to more interesting things. But yeah, the actual like mechanics of how the park work are a bit all over the place, and I just don't question them. It's fine. Like, guns work against the hosts, they don't work against people. So I guess swords, maybe they equip everyone with chainmail before they go in. You're gonna have to like those like diving suits that people wear to protect them from shark bites. That's what you have to wear before you go into Eastworld or whatever they're going to call it. But in terms of the aesthetic and the style, like, I love Chambara. I love me some samurai films. Lone Wolf and Cub is amazing. So I very much am into seeing who is in the samurai version of this and how big a part that plays, because it looks awesome and it's a great setting.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks very much, guys. That's end of season 1. Join us next week for the start of season 2 here on the After Dark podcast. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, we are the Culture Cave on YouTube. If you would like to subscribe on audio apps, we're the After Dark podcast there. We've also got a podcast called The Best Movie Podcast Ever. Go and search that up. It's great fun. And apart from that, support the podcast with the links in the description, like the video, all that sort of stuff. And we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Sayonara.
Whoa!
I couldn't resist.
Thank you for listening. The After Dark podcast has been a Culture Cave production. Please subscribe on audio apps as well as on YouTube at The Culture Cave. Join us next week as Konrad journeys further into the unknown.